Welcome to Roleplay Cafe. It's Dale here. I thought I would do a little reflections of session 7 of the Dark Age Man Current Chronicles that Jason, David, Sam, and myself were partaking in. Uh, as Jason said, he had ran a couple, so did David and Sam. And to tell you the truth, I love when other people uh, present the game. Uh, I've did it a fair amount myself, obviously, and so is Jason. But it's always nice when others pick up that mantle and you know go full tilt ahead. Uh, but the guys wanted me to pick up, so for the sake of maybe variety and a different perspective, I obliged. But I'm glad that it's being passed on to David next. We'll see what's in store. So I'm kind of enjoying the round robin aspect of the game right now. Um, Now, Jason had mentioned in particular me using the charts that Mark Kernau had placed in the game, had submitted. It is on page 74 and 75. What prompted that is even I'm guilty of right before the game, whenever I came on, I was still writing random seeds down, right? Trying to finish that list. I probably had about 6 left to do. Um, Now, I didn't, um, there had been, I didn't get to watch the recap. Um, the guys were nice enough in Discord to give momentary glimpses as far as they were recollecting what had happened previously, because it had been a few months since we had played, so get a jog of the old memory. Um, so I wanted to start. I knew that the situation when Sam had voiced that he was playing the Blood Witch, that she wouldn't necessarily be immediately involved in what was transpiring in and around Dredgewater proper, where the other two characters, David and Jason's characters, probably would. So there might be a disconnect there with any kind of dilemmas or situations that may be uh, impressed upon one character as opposed to another character, right? So it may be more immediate for one and less for the other. Ain't necessarily true, because it could be more of a dilemma that is more fully encompassing a territory that would swallow them whole. But I didn't know where Sam wanted to exactly start. Well, he said he positioned himself about a fortnight north of Dredgewater when he was coming in. Well, Jason does the recap. I don't want to hammer through that again. But I didn't exactly know where he was going to start, and I felt that, like I said, that Jason and David's characters would be more so affected by any kind of current dilemmas, right? Just proximity wise. So uh, I opened up on page 74 and 75 and rolled randomly to see what was going on. Now, some of this, I don't want to open the door, because there's been a previous series of events that kind of is peppered throughout these sections, and maybe and will possibly be affecting any kind of conceptualization, uh, activation wise, as far as what's to bear on the characters and the land itself. As like, for example, whenever David said, "Is this the witch that All of a sudden that's a possibility. So these things that happened before um, are building blocks to something that we're currently in the process of building, potentially. So what I did was roll uh, first monastery, priests, monks, or pilgrims, a feast day, and I'll leave the other two silent right now because that to me didn't really get fully explored. But that was something that could be and would be immediately acknowledged by the population, Lord Washburn, and be taken his mind. All right, so there's some hustle and bustle going around that fact. Um, then I rolled the King's Wooden Palace, a witch or cunning man, lost in the mud, the gift of a ghost. So I'm sitting there going like, okay, I guess something is around there. Now I'm not immediately applying it to the witch. I really don't know, right? I've written down a list of words, and as I'd said, I wanted to make more. I've always been a fan of making uh, on the seed list less specified and more multi-applicable words that can be used in various situations. You know, for example, like if David's playing a philosopher, scholar, and uh, Jason's playing a nobleman. Somebody else could be playing. He played a merchant before. All of this, these words need to bear. It doesn't need to be fully combat focused, right? But it could be. I mean, a word could be more applicable for a situation that is being presenting itself, you know, as in the reality of the fiction, like is growing there, you know, or it could mean a situation totally different than any kind of martial combat related activities, you know, that the characters can get involved in. You know, whether or not somebody is in a debate, a political debate, and is making their point and rolls to see if that point sticks, you know, as opposed to somebody else who's trying to uh, haggle down, you know, for the price of something and using, you know, using the purse to get that. Like we had mentioned before, Jason in particular about the being a universal system. Uh, that's there, but the words themselves should be able, in my estimation, or at least my attempts, to be able to be malleable enough to apply them to whatever current situation, like of those examples I just gave, to where something can affect it in whatever way, right? Um, Seed wise, it doesn't mean that things aren't dropped in from the book. The creatures are other situations that they're in the wake of previous sessions, activities, and things that have fed in from those sessions that now could happen. Yeah, that's there too. But um, I wanted to start uh, the dilemmas, so to speak, off in that situation was currently whether or not outwardly seen or inwardly, as I read the King's Wooden Palace, a witch or cunning man. I don't really know. Lost in the mud. What exactly is this going on? You know, it doesn't really fully come into being until I roll some kind of random seed, and then I go, well, this there you go, something in the mud. And I roll bone, right? So that was when the bleached bone protruded out of the mud because I'd already kind of, well, in my mindset, it wasn't quite the quagmire that Dredgewater can be. It was a little bit uh, more encrusted, so to speak. So he sees the bone. All right. Now we go from there. Like Jason said, we don't know if it's a just a murder victim or something weird. I don't know. I don't know. The dice may tell with the via the random seeds our situations will bear uh, in players' perspective and the leads that they take. It isn't a given that what they suspect is going to be automatically the truth. But if they're running down that, it very well could be the truth. if they discern that it is via the dice, right? So that's where, as a presenter, I don't know, and I don't want to make any presuppositions that that is the truth. So I let them follow down the threads that they want to. So if they want to go down an investigative road, as David's character may have done, being a philosopher, and then maybe he wanted to study what was going on. Maybe he uh, had some inklings that something wasn't right, or wanted to. I don't know. But the die said bomb, so that's how I translated it into the situation, and he responded in kind. Now, before the session, what I did was send Sam a Discord message and asked him to roll a d20, and then sequentially 48s or 40 12s. And before the session, right before, I told him to look on those pages in the books, and that was the vision that he had. Now, of course, I knew his numbers, so I could look it up too. But it correlated nicely, ironically enough, as this game seems to do from time to time, with one of the two dilemmas that I said about. Okay, Sam's was along the ancient way. Farmers' villages, townsfolk, commoners, exiles to and from another kingdom. What kind of kingdom are we talking about? A holy kingdom, or that anything is interpreted. The bones of a saint. Wow. With pilgrims? Wait a minute. It's getting a little bit more divine. And remember, these are all from different charts that are coupled together. Strange coincidences surround you, which I tied a little bit of that in, right? So I'm reading that going, okay. Now, whether or not this is a fully true vision that his blood witch sees, or or whether or not and to what degree he follows these visions or dismisses them, is totally in his purview. That's him. In the game, he listed that it it prompted him to get off the ancient way to a more ancient way, get off the Roman road system that was there from Northich down to Dredgewater into the more Celtic area. Right now, when he did that, I'd rolled carved too, uh, which I ended up putting into the trees. Right. So to me, it was wards and the Celtic area. So I kind of knew where he was shifting off to and what he was trying to do. Getting off the beaten path. Like that vision had divined that might be more advantageous to take that path. So, yeah, that's great. But ironically, there were some carvings that I rolled, so it manifested in that. But after I rolled the trap, and it was a trap. Now this is interesting because as we play and as you play this game, like I said, in the wake of previous sessions, there's going to be certain relationships that develop between NPCs and individual characters, or the world and how they're viewed. As in, like whenever Jason was talking to the young Lord Washburn, how's your father? And of course, you see Washburn's a bit flummoxed with this. These pilgrims coming down. Feast day. Now, what feast is this? Well, this, to throw back earlier, whenever Sam envisioned and why he got off the road, these pilgrims heading south with this box of, containing something. And I correlated it with the bone I rolled earlier, right? Well, the bones. Well, that was part of what he said. I just couldn't remember it immediately at the time. Well, what's the bones of the saints? Well, actually, along that road, why would they be traveling that road with whose bones from Northich, which would be Aethelwald, right? And there was a sighting along that road of Aethelwald with the stigmata and the whole thing in a previous session, right? So he had been seen, so that's why. And he had been declared a saint at that point. So whether or not they're just on their way, retracing his steps, going backwards all the way to London and going through, And whether they'll deposit the bones there or deposit them in London, that's to be seen. I don't know. I don't know what'll happen to them. But that's what Sam saw, right? Which correlated with why it was real or happening was, I said, the monastery that I had rolled, priests, monks, pilgrims, feast day. All right, so this correlated with what Sam rolled, and it gave more weight for the fact that it was true. That's what prompted me to respond to Jason's character uh, as uh, you know, the NPC young Lord Washburn in a situation that they were expecting on this feast day for the pilgrims to come down, and they had heard that they carried the bones of Aethelwald, the Epiphany, the feast of Saint Aethelwald, right? So it's perfect. All these all these trajectories just intersect at this nexus, and you go, okay, well, that makes sense, right? So, of course, which, like Jason said, well, this is perfect. We need to go, and of course, that's when the young lord explained that he tried to extend that offer, and they said no. Divinely, they were protected by the divine. Anyway, so it seems like I'm doing a bit of a recap too. But Sam's character, the witch, the blood witch, had gotten off the beaten path according to the information that she saw in the vision, which happened to correlate with what was going on and made it more so true than we could have ever either have thought possible or even contrived. And there was less of a need for me to roll luck to see if those visions were more so true, because it allied with what was already written as truth in the dilemma, right? So I knew it was actually going on. There's no reason to contest it. Maybe different aspects could be, but that's what it was. But whenever I'd roll the trap, to get back to that, and this is, I had some roll of luck to see how lucky he was at not being the one to fall in the pit. And before then, I had said, a wolf howls, basically, correlated with these ward signs and what was around the area. So when I rolled the trap, this one said wolf. It was kind of a foreshadowing of what, because in my mind it was probably a wolf trap, with a punji stick and like that. They're only, 6 foot deep and so wide, a little bit larger for the horse. Well, whenever it is a game of communication, and that's the ambiance and atmosphere and what I had set in my mind. There's times when you play, especially if you play in a game where everybody, like I said before, we're all presenters. We're just presenting our characters, or I'm presenting the world, and there has to be some solidification as far as like dependability of something being solid or real. I often say, or at least in my mind, said that the players have the liberty and agency to narrate within arm's length. And we do depend on that in the game to have an honest transition of information back and forth. And like Jason really points out, that if somebody tries to assert something that seems outside of the bounds, or even the presenters, what may be in his mind, it can be a roll to see exactly how true that is, or if it's just a misinformation that the player character holds, are just not true. Whether or not they're trying to just say it is and isn't. Convincing. Could be a myriad of different reasons. But there can be a slight exchange in stepping on toes. And during the game, afterwards, because I didn't speak that clearly, at least in my mind, right, while the dialogue was going on. And Sam got the impression that the whole horse, even though I awkwardly tried to say that half the front of the horse and the rider was holding on, because I was trying to fit that large horse into an awkward size hole, and it just wasn't doing it. So all the men was trying to pull him out. But Sam approached, and he's in the hole. Now, for one, you shouldn't have argued it in a way, and I get that. Um, when we all have to respect, uh, within reason, the narrative agency of me representing the world and the players representing themselves, interacting with the world, it isn't all just an automatic. So there has to be some time in some moments when there's more of a clarification that happens. Uh, my initial attempt at it clarifying when I should have just let it go. And like David said, it pushes the narrative forward. It could have gone into different areas that I didn't expect, you know. But to me, that whole region was not something that they would be trapping larger beasts that size. So I didn't want to have that there. Even though I could have rolled something, which I ironically did, giant creature, right? So on the whim, when I rolled that seed, I had to pull out, aside from what I had myself envisioned that was, that was the typical inhabitants creature wise within that in that forested area, which is probably boar and wolves or whatever like that. I limited that myself, wanting to give that impression or illusion. So I didn't allow that hole to be larger. So I was putting my own stumbling block into the realm of possibility that ironically the seed provided right after that. Because I had gone back to with David and Jason in Dredgewater. And by the time I came back to Sam, I'd rolled that large creature, giant creature. So I flipped through the book, and the first giant creature was a serpent that I read. Okay. And I'd rolled a mound too in that area. I was like, okay, well, there you go. So that too could have been something that warranted larger things. It may seem like a niggling point that I'm getting to. I'm just saying that there has to be, uh, even in moments of miscommunication or seemingly so, that there has to be enough flexibility to where even a presenter or a player has to be flexible enough not to give a hard and fast representation, even though in my mind I was like, well, this area by default is this. So I was limiting the possibility for any kind of like danger, because I wanted to give a sense of what this area was like. And then after the fact, the dice proved me wrong, right? So the horse, if Sam would have seen it go into the hole that size, like the horse is all the way inside of the hole. Where me, I just thought it was a wolf trap, right? So I should have been like, oh, okay. Well, this is a little bit of a deeper dive into how communication in uh, in a game like this needs to be a little bit malleable and flexible, uh, and the ability to let go of some of your assumptions about the world or what you're trying to present. You can't really limit yourself, because innocent enough as it was, it is, as far as from my presentation. Okay, well, he's going in here, so I want to present it as a hostile area where this is typical, these traps would be or whatever. But I should have approached it in the same way as I did the bone that was found. I go, I don't know whose it is. I should have did that. If the players were looking at me going like, oh, this is a hole this big, like David said, it pushes the narrative forward. I would have been like, oh crap, it is. Wonder what that means. And then it would have been answered with the role of the giant creature. You see, so this is a little bit of refinement. Playing this game and playing this style, uh, and potentially there's been moments where people can step on the other's toes or overreach or overextend, you know, and like we'll say, there are ways to do that with adjusted difficulty modifiers. If you try to do something above your abilities, it's just going to be a harder attempt to do it. So you adjust it up, or if you're trying to say you're doing something to make it, there's still that catch-all luck to see that, or maybe another attribute is more appropriate to be used or whatever. But there still is that utilization of the dice to determine the reality of something, and that's important. But it's just of the mindset that the player has to do that. As far as the rest of the game, the way we approached it, or the way I approached it, or try to approach it, like Jason said, in the first 30, 40 minutes, I just let the guys tell me what it is. When I go in here, I don't want so much to set the stage. I want the players to lead and go in the direction that they go, with the desires that they have. There could be moments when you go from scene to scene or from player to player, there's also, uh, we have, when you feel the need to roll something or a timer going off in your head, because when I rolled what was going on in the seed chart, and it interrupted the dialogue at the table and the banter at the table, I felt that it was there. I felt like enough time had been allowed uh, to transpire before something would progress the story further in a different direction. And that's quite all right to have to adapt as a player to a new set of circumstances that is presented. And that's why we roll to see what's going on. But you have to be mindful too, I think, lesson learned. I have to be mindful of the intent, or mindful of the intention that the player is driving at. So if Jason wanted to get to the point to where he wanted to saddle up and leave and talk to the young lord about doing that, it shouldn't be stymied to where that can't be completed, or run through. Now, he could have left at the moment or just declared it and left or did whatever, but different things happen that you have to contend with. But I think that there's, especially when you're playing a game like this, you have to be, like I say, more mindful of intention, the intentionality, and reading whenever there is a point of appropriate level of completion in dialogue before interruption. Um, this is it is it is a learned ability and learned skill. The more you do it, the more um, you get better at facilitating games like this, and it's all a learning endeavor to do this and interact with people and communicate and make sure that the timing is right. It's like being in a band and everybody's hitting their mark, or somebody has an offbeat, uh, including the presenter. Like I said, everybody's presenting at the table, essentially. The players presenting themselves in their world, uh, the presenters presenting the world's pushback in the direction that the players are going, and you just roll with it. But there has to be moments when you yield, and moments when you, I guess, the presenter, like I said, pacing is a little bit of responsibility for that, to see when you roll and when something comes to bear. But it's all practice. I think, like when Jason said that, people have a little bit of a reluctance about approaching a game like this. None of this that I'm talking about is some kind of anything that will derail or ruin a game. I'm going into the finer aspects of how to have a more harmonious communication at the table to facilitate a little bit better uh, role playing interaction. You know, but that's just a sweet spot. It's there. It's really nothing to be afraid of or anything that you can't. You know, you have to get your feet wet. You have to jump in there. You have to do it. And then you have to, you know, love it and carry on and on your craft, as it were. Um, anyway, yeah, I had a great time. Had a great time. I think the guys did. I appreciate them breathing life into the world because they do just as well as the presenter. Everybody at the table is, is engaged in the world and moving it along. And I think what David said, like the bubble of the world, and it goes around you as you go in the world, and everything's interacting around you. Yeah, that's how it is. But a great experience. Can't wait for the next one. David's up and running that. So, and it was good to get back to it. It was good to get back to it. It feels very, very natural. You know, may stumble from time to time, but you pick it back up and you start running. You know, you find your feet. Anyway, this has been Dale, and I'm out of here. Yeah, have a good one. Till next time.